Hi, everybody. Welcome to Frugal Tech Live. It is episode number 315, recorded Tuesday, February the 22nd, 2011. The Smart Scarecrow is our guest today. So we want you to join us in our discussion regarding the internet kill switch, what's going on in the state of Wisconsin. I think it's starting to mushroom all over to many, many different states, and maybe a little bit about business and computing in general on this week's edition of Frugal Tech Live. So don't go away. We'll be right back. And we are so glad you could join us today, this Tuesday in February. The last Tuesday of February, by the way. The first of the month begins on a Tuesday for March. We want to remind everybody, if you are watching us on Justin.tv, come over to live.frugalbrothers.com. But before you do that, if you can click that follow us button on Justin TV, that shows your support for what we do here on the program. We also want to remind you can watch us on YouTube as well. Frugal Tech on YouTube is our channel there. And Twitter, on Frugal Tech on Twitter as well. We are sponsored in part by GFI Software. Now, they've got a great product called GFI Events Manager. And if you're a network administrator and you're being overwhelmed by all the noise that's coming out of your servers, and you need to get critical events information, locate it, catalog it, database it, for a variety of reasons, whether you're trying to deal with compliance issues such as HIPAA, for example, GFI Events Manager would be a godsend to you to have in your arsenal. Now, where can you learn more about it? If you go to frugalbrothers.com and click Solutions, right there you can download a full working evaluation copy of GFI Events Manager. We also like to thank our friends at Telestream, the makers of Wirecast. They help sponsor our show by providing us the software, and a lot of people want to know what you use to put all this together. It's called Wirecast from Telestream. Go there and check out Wirecast today. Our guest today is Smart Scarecrow. We think this is going to be a good show, so I want to bring him right on here. And let's give a warm welcome to the Smart Scarecrow. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's good to be here. Frankly, you're a brave man having me on.
Well, we're going to find out. No, you're fine. You're fine.
In any case, I hope we entertain your audience and that we don't lose too many of them.
Oh, no. Everybody going, hey, there's the Smart Scarecrow. Well, we've got some important issues, and I know you got a lot to say about it, and I think I want to get right to it. Let's talk about what's going on in Wisconsin real quick. I want to get to that, right away, because I think what we're seeing here is of interest to so many Americans out there. And first off, I want to get your take. Is the governor of Wisconsin doing the right thing in not backing down on this bill, which would basically eliminate collective bargaining in state employees of Wisconsin?
Well, the big fear I have there is is that central issue of collective bargaining. This is a right that organized labor won. They won it hard. I mean, people died for this right. Early union organizers in the early 1900s, right through the Great Depression years of the 1930s. I mean, they faced incredible obstacles. Had to face machine guns on occasion to get the right to organize and collectively bargain with an employer. Mm-hmm. And the thought that we might take a step back 100 years, mm-hmm. and deny people the right to collectively bargain with an employer, that to me is a scary proposition. It's something that all of us should be concerned with. Might be an unpopular position. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought the revolution would start with a bunch of patriots marching on the Capitol. I had no idea that the opening salvos would be fired by public employees. But, if that's where it starts, that's where it starts. And my point of view is the enemy of my enemy is my ally. Mm-hmm. And even though I agree that public employees right now are way overcompensated compared to those of us in the private sector, these people are standing up for a fundamental right. I've got to get behind them. I've got to back them. I mean, I'm not a big fan of WikiLeaks. Frankly, I think WikiLeaks is a government psyop. But I have to get behind them on First Amendment grounds, whether I like them or not. And I find myself in the same position in this situation with the public employees in Wisconsin. Whether I agree with their compensation plan or not, I have to get behind them and back their position, because the right to organize a union and collectively bargain for compensation is a fundamental right that people in this country fought and died for as recently as 60 years ago. I mean, what are we going to do next? We're going to put the black people in the back of the bus again?
Well, it's kind of interesting that the other day, apparently the Tea Party has bussed in supporters of the governor of the state of Wisconsin. And the funding for that, this is an interesting thing. The funding for this was provided by a organization, a non-for-profit organization called Americans for Prosperity. Okay? This, however, a lot of their funding from Americans for Prosperity is directly funded by two billionaire brothers by the name of the Koch brothers. Who have been instrumental in funding activities of the Tea Party, for example, and have taken funding from Americans for Prosperity from $7 million a year to $40 million a year. I'm very curious as to what the Koch brothers are attempting to do by controlling the strings here. Now, getting back to what you were saying about the right to collective bargaining, I fundamentally and in principle agree with you. What we're hearing from, let's take the governor of New Jersey, Christie, who made a very strong statement saying, you know what, folks, you have been lied to by multiple politicians for many, many years, that we could provide all the benefits that's been promised to you. You were flat lied to. And that we cannot continue down ever-increasing benefits and pay when we're seeing state coffers shrink. And this is part of the reason why we've gotten into this financial mess. And if you look around, like Wisconsin, I think has a multi-billion-dollar payment that they're going to miss or not make to fund state pension plans. Christie's doing the same kind of thing. Aren't they faced with a really tough economic reality? And I think their point of view, Scarecrow, is that if we allow collective bargaining, when things start to turn the corner, the unions are going to be back full force demanding the high wages and benefits, and we're going to go right back into the rabbit hole. Do you think that is what he's facing?
Well, you know, I pity this this guy Walker in Wisconsin. Walker. I mean, yeah. he's got some tough choices he's got to make, and I would hate to find myself in that position. And I think the proper way to approach a situation like this is to get together with the unions and try to renegotiate those contracts. Now, he has other options available to him. He could get the union to come back to the table, renegotiate the deal, and say, hey, look, we're on hard times. We just, we can't afford this anymore. So we got two choices. Either you guys renegotiate this contract and or let us defer some payments or something to get past the rough times. Otherwise, we're going to have to cut back on services. We're going to have to cut some of you folks loose. Now, at that point, he's put the ball in the union's court, and the union gets to go back to their membership. And, it's handled like a negotiation in any business deal. Bottom line is they signed a contract with these employees. Mm-hmm. If you find yourself in a tough bind and you can't honor the contract, there are ways that gentlemen handle such disagreements. My problem is this guy, this governor, wants to just single-handedly write a law. He wants to pass a law that says their contractual obligation is now null and void. Mm-hmm. That, to me, strikes of tyranny, mm-hmm. and it's something that should not be allowed to stand. So, my position on it would be, hey, you got a problem. You can't afford the agreement you made with these people 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Things have changed. Okay, go back to the table and renegotiate the deal. These people got nice gigs, okay? Mm-hmm. They don't want to give up these gigs. They want to keep their gigs. And if they got to take a little hit, they'll take a little hit, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Just because they're unions doesn't mean they're fools. They understand that, maybe they got a little better deal than what the state can afford now. But to do it unilaterally by just passing a law that says, we're going to dishonor our original agreement, and by the way, you no longer have the right to collectively bargain with us as a union. No, I'm sorry. That's when the pickets got every right to be out there. They should be protesting.
There's other parts of this law as well that would definitely not be helpful to a union. For example, if this thing is passed, union shops have to vote for whether to have union membership every year, for example. Members would not have to be compelled to pay into union dues. Everything about this bill pretty much would kill the state workers union. Now, I understand that he's exempting fire, police, and I think one other group from this, but the rest of them, for now, your teachers and all the other state workers, I'm assuming things like the Department of Transportation employees and all these guys would effectively see their union gone, just the legs cut out from underneath them and over. Being that I come from a blue-collar background, I know that the unions were instrumental in our family being able to, my dad to be able to make a living wage, that they did have safety inspectors at the mill to make sure that machines were safe, that they did get vacations, that we did get dental care and vision care, and all that is part of the compensation. And since most of the union jobs have actually left now, you'll notice the general trend is a reduction in benefits, less vacation time, more and more instances of unsafe working conditions. And part of me wonders how Americans can be supportive of those who have the agenda to disembowel the organized labor. What am I missing here on this? Now, remember, I claim that I'm a moderate Republican, especially in social issues. For the most part, I believe government needs to keep its big nose out of our personal lives whenever possible. But when it comes to this, are we going to step too far?
Well, I tell you, this you mentioned the Tea Party.
Yeah.
And the Tea Party at this point, they've done to the Tea Party basically what this governor wants to do to the unions. The Tea Party has been eviscerated.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know how the Tea Party got started, the Tea Party got started by a bunch of guys in Boston, Massachusetts, who took the 9/11 Commission report out to the Bay in Boston and did a symbolic reenactment of the original Tea Party from our revolutionary days, throwing the 9/11 report into Boston Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these guys were real, honest-to-God centrists. They claimed no right-left paradigm. All they knew is that the government was lying to them, and they stood for truth in government. That's what the Tea Party was all about. T stands for taxed enough already.
Mm-hmm.
So the platform of the Tea Party was truth in government and a dramatic reduction in taxes. They felt that the federal government was way too intrusive in our lives, and if anything, the Tea Party was very close to the libertarian point of view. They wanted to basically disembowel the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Now it gets to the problem we have right now in Wisconsin. Part of the problem is the United States government, the federal government, taps us for so darn much money. I mean, I don't know about you, but I pay roughly 10 times to the Fed what I pay to my state government. That's totally the opposite of the way the country was originally founded. Mm-hmm. The taxing authority was originally intended to be the state. Mm-hmm. The state is the closest entity to the people. The state is responsible for providing basic services to its citizens, and the state was to be the taxing authority. The state would then tithe to the government a portion of their revenue to support the federal bureaucracy, and the only thing the federal establishment was supposed to be involved in is to make sure that the states honored their interstate obligations and to provide for the common defense. That was it. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be a real straightforward relationship. You had these independent nations that we refer to as states who decided to come together under a common flag, and they established the federal government to support the interests of the sovereign states. Now you got a state like Wisconsin. They can't go to their constituents and raise taxes because the people in Wisconsin are taxed to the limit. When your tax burden gets up around 45-50%, that's about it. I mean, just about everybody gets their back up against a wall when they take a look at what's coming in and how much they're left with, and they realize one government entity or another is tapping me for darn near 50% of what I make. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, I'm sick of it. You tax me another dime, I say no. So this governor's got his back up against a wall. He's got obligations to public employees that he can't afford to pay. He can't go to the constituents and take any more money from them because they ain't got it. So, if it wasn't for the federal burden, mm-hmm. I suspect the citizens in Wisconsin, to maintain the services that they'd like to have from their state, would probably be willing to ante up the dough to cover the difference. But, it's already been tapped. The Fed has got it.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's one of the interesting points. Number one, states have been able to defer some of the pain of budget cuts and austerity programs for the last couple of years because of stimulus money, right? They received billions and billions of dollars in stimulus money.
States didn't get any of that money.
There was a number of states who did. And used it to
no, they got
budget.
loans.
Well, the stimulus funds. That's what it was all billed under, is stimulus funds.
Well, they got loans. they got no stimulus money from the federal government that didn't come with paybacks and interest.
Okay, but they were using that money to shore up their budgets, and that is a fact. Louisiana, Bobby Jindal is one of the few governors who turned away some of these stimulus loans, as you call them. But many of the governors did take these funds to shore up their budgets, which allowed them to defer some of these hard decisions. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. You take the state of Wisconsin, you take New Jersey and other states, or Ohio, that's going through these issues. And what the state is doing through their budget cuts. I mean, when you mention the state being the closest to the people providing basic services, how about your city governments? They're the ones who's going to bear the brunt of this. As the state cuts its budgets back, its funding back, the bills for the cities are going to go through the roof. Now that is a topic of conversation right now in Wisconsin. What are we going to do when the state cuts back our funding to funds that we receive for our schools, that we receive for our police departments, that we receive for fire? How are we going to get the money to pay these? These are on the city level. And the only way to do that is to raise property taxes. And the problem is, like here in Indiana, we've got property tax caps in place. So how do you balance these budgets without making extreme cuts? We're not going to raise taxes. We ain't going to do. The Republicans have made that loud and clear. We're not raising taxes. So what do? Do we fire police and fire people to balance the budget? I mean,
well,
aren't we
eventually,
throwing the baby out with the,
I mean, right now it would be a real bad idea to tell the state police that you're going to cut their pay because, frankly, this governor in Wisconsin, I think he's depending on the state police to protect him right now from people that probably like to, hang him by his thumbs. So they don't want to mess with the police right now.
No.
They need those guys. But yeah, eventually, police and firefighters are going to have to be part of the mix. They're, bottom line is a lot of these government entities are going to have to take a real hard look at the services that they're providing, and some tough decisions they're going to have to make. I suspect that some basic fundamental services that people have become accustomed to getting from their state, from their county, from their city, are probably going to have to be stopped. Here in my own area, the county,
okay.
The county used to collect our trash. We used to get trash collection from the county. It was part of our, it was covered under our property taxes. Some years back, this happened 4 or 5 years ago, they decided, well, we just can't afford this anymore. So, hey, all you homeowners, what we're going to do is we're going to raise your property taxes. Well, there was a property owner, property tax revolt. Our property taxes here are some of the highest in the nation already. And we just flat said no. So they said, okay, well, your other choice is you're going to have to pay for your own darn trash collection. So now I have to hire a private firm to come in and collect my trash. I think we're going to see a lot more of that as time moves on. I think that government has overextended. I think they've promised people a lot more than what they can reasonably provide. In boom times, when everybody's got more money than they know what to do with it, it's real easy for government to make people all kinds of promises. Well, now the bills come due, and a lot of the services that we have grown to anticipate from government, I think we're going to have to reevaluate those, and we're going to have to pick and choose very carefully, and maybe get back to bare bones. But one thing we do have to protect is hard-won rights, and the right to collective bargaining. That should not be on the table. That is not negotiable. I don't want to have to go back through that period in time during the early 1900s where union organizers were shot by Pinkerton men for trying to organize a union. I don't want to have to go back through that again. This nation's already been through that part in our history. The right to collective bargaining was won with blood, and it shouldn't be on the table. It's not negotiable. Renegotiate the contracts, decide on which services we want, which services we just flat can't afford from government. Those things are on the table. Let's talk about that. Those are issues that should be debated. But basic fundamental rights, the basic fundamental right to collectively bargain, that's not on the table.
I got a question for you, Scarecrow, because, when you talk to so many people today, so many of us do not, or so many people in the workforce, especially the younger folks in the workforce, have never worked in a union shop or have little or done nothing but heard negative things about unions. Do you think that certain people have done a great job in making unions look bad across the board? And
well, yeah. Unions have been vilified, no doubt about it. And there was a period in time when unions were heavily influenced by organized crime. I'm not saying that unions are great, or that unions are some panacea going to save us all from the tyrannical government that's about to be imposed on us. But unions are one of the few forces left in America that might be able to organize against tyranny. And what few of them are left need to be protected. Right now, public employees are the largest single group of unionized employees. I mean, it used to be, I think the Teamsters used to be the biggest. Now it's public employees.
Right.
I mean, as much as I might dislike some unions, as much as I might disagree with some of their, fat contracts, we do have to protect what little bit of organized labor is left in this nation, because I'll tell you, there's precious little of it left. By the way, I have never belonged to a union, never worked for a union shop, never benefited from a union contract. Frankly, I've been unemployed for 35 years, so I wouldn't know what it's like to collectively bargain. But I do know my history. I know how these things evolved. I know how they came about. And it's not something that any American should wish to give up easily.
You've made some great points. And because you're right, union benefits, union contracts have been hard won. I won't go into it, but at one point in my life, I worked for a bakery that brought in a union, and I watched what happened from the time that the union organizer arrived, with the meetings that we had with the union organizer, to the time we voted for a union, to the time we signed a contract. So I've been through that process. I've worked at unionized shops. When I was going to school, I worked for Chrysler Corporation at the time, and also a company called Continental Steel, which was also a union company. So I've been around the labor unions. What I think what's important. Many companies base their pay and benefits on what their competitors are doing. Okay, so when you have a company, if we go back in time, especially when we had a lot of manufacturing in the country, and a lot of people were members of unions, in order to keep unions out of some companies, they would pretty much match the pay and benefits in order to keep unions from coming in. So even though you weren't working in a union shop, you were kind of, in a way, indirectly benefiting from the union members who did.
Exactly.
Okay, go through all that. So for the folks who say, well, life would just be great if we never had unions, and they're the reasons why our country's all messed up, I effectively, truly believe in my heart that we would not have a middle class in this country had it not been for organized labor.
And now, of course, as I've mentioned, I'm one of those guys who took the red pill, and I believe that this union busting scenario that we see coming on now is all part of a grand plan to basically eliminate the middle class in the United States. The unions did indeed bring about the middle class, and without the protections that unions fought and won for us, There would not have ever been a middle class. Now, the middle class, I don't think anybody will disagree with the statement that the middle class right now is under pressure, shall we say?
Pressure, outright attack.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I believe personally that war is currently being waged on the middle class.
And who benefits from that,
I believe
Scarecrow?
that the union busting is one serious battle in the war that's being waged against the middle class. And it's a place where I think Americans need to draw the line and hold right there.
Who benefits from this war on the middle class? Who benefits from it? Why would somebody want to declare war on the middle class?
Well, anybody who might be threatened by a large population of extremely well-educated people that have disposable income. Now, who might that be?
Well, my guess would be the political and economic elites of the country.
Probably. 2% of the population of the United States.
Okay. Listen, why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, and remember, if you're watching on Justin.tv, come over to live.frugalbrothers.com. That's the chat room we moderate. We'll be right back after this brief message, and we're going to talk a little bit more about unions and what's going on in Wisconsin with Smart Scarecrow. We'll be right back.
GFI Software provides a single source for networking, security, monitoring, and hosted IT solutions for small to medium enterprises. GFI's extensive suite of award-winning on-premise solutions includes anti-spam, email security, email archiving, endpoint antivirus, centrally managed backup, event log management, server-based faxing, network monitoring, removable device control, vulnerability scanning and patch management, and web filtering and security. GFI also offers a suite of hosted solutions including email security and continuity, frontline email defense, and monitoring and remote management. With award-winning technology, an aggressive pricing strategy, and a strong focus on the unique requirements of small to medium-sized enterprises, GFI Software can satisfy your needs on a global scale. Please visit us online at www.gfi.com.
From the
Okay, we are back with Smart Scarecrow, and we're talking about, we got on the subject of organized labor and its importance to the United States, and the fact is that there is an outright war being declared on the middle class, a middle class that more than likely would not exist without labor unions, an organized labor union, movement, I should say. And the thing is that a lot of companies depend on the middle class in order to buy their goods and services. So on one side, some people want to get rid of organized labor and basically, I think, make us into a third world country. And on the other token, their business would be deeply affected without the vast buying power of the American middle class. It's kind of almost a weird thing that's going on out there. But what's really scary to me, and I think to many fellow Americans, and maybe even people in other countries that's going through the similar process, such as the UK, Greece, Spain, other countries out there, is that we're, instead of raising, now here's my thing, instead of raising taxes on those who have benefited the most, the last decade under the Bush tax cuts, for example, we would rather balance our budgets on the back of entitlement programs and programs that help Americans in need. And I have a problem with that, Scarecrow. I do have a problem with that. For example, here's one real example. I personally know of people that receive payments from the Energy Assistance Program. They need that because they're living on very little bit of money, and they're getting very high heat bills and that kind of thing, and they really need that money to help them offset these payments. And pretty much the Republican side of the aisle want to kill almost all, if not all, most funding for that program. I have a problem with that. We don't want to see grandma freezing in the cold.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to see anybody freeze in the cold. But bottom line is, I can't afford to pay for it. So if there's two choices, if one choice is they freeze in the cold, or the other choice is I have to ante up some more.
I'm not talking about you, though. I'm talking about the true beneficiaries of the Bush era tax cuts.
Well, yeah, but see, here's the alternative argument. See,
Okay.
you got this guy who everybody refers to as the capitalist. Now, I see somebody out there saying he's a rich Republican. Well, I'll tell you, I know a lot of Republicans, and very few of the Republicans I know are rich. Most of them, are barely getting by. They're small business owners. The fact of the matter is, if not for these capitalists, these guys who did very well over the last 10 years, there wouldn't be any jobs, because these are the guys who accumulate wealth and then take that wealth and supposedly invest that wealth in business. Well, now that's the way the classic economics model.
Well, that's how it's supposed to work.
That's how it's supposed to work.
But they didn't do that with their savings in the tax revenues, did they?
Bingo.
There you go.
Bingo.
Well, that was the bill of sale that we got, though, from the Bush administration.
So what we've got is here's an example. General Motors. Let's take a look at General Motors. General Motors failed. General Motors was a bankrupt corporation.
Yes, it was.
That basically should have been tanked. Their assets should have been disposed of and probably sold to some sharp young boys who maybe could have turned it around and done something with it. But instead, the government took money from me, you, everybody in this chat room, probably from our children and our grandchildren, and gifted General Motors with a big chunk of change. Now, the idea was General Motors would take that money, improve their plants, improve their product, and hire a whole bunch of U.S. citizens so that, we could get some guys back to work, right? And it sounded like a great idea, and the way it was presented to all of us, we kind of smiled. We said, okay, well, it's a ton of dough, but we're reinvesting in the future, and maybe my kid will get a job on an assembly line and turn out Chevys. That's a good deal. Okay, yeah, I'm willing to do that. Well, then we find out what General Motors really did with, what was it, $2.5 billion they get? I can't remember. It was such a
staggering amount of money. A staggering amount of money.
It had so many zeros after it, right. I can't count them all. When you get into numbers more than my fingers and toes, I can't count that high. It was a ton of dough. Well, they took that money and they invested it in their plants in China and Brazil. No new General Motors facilities sprung up here in the United States. No new products were developed. No Americans got jobs over all that damn money. They took money from me. They took money from Bruce. Every person in this chat room. They took money from your children and your grandchildren, and they invested it in manufacturing facilities in China and Brazil. So Brazilians get jobs, Chinese get jobs, and we get the bill.
It's kind of I read that for the first time ever, General Motors sold more Buicks in China than they did in the U.S.
Well,
it's just an amazing
it's frightening. So,
now Ford, on the other hand, did a good job, don't you think, ultimately?
Who?
Ford Motor.
Well, yeah, Ford Motor didn't take any of the handouts.
They didn't take any of the handouts, and they've done remarkably well.
Yeah, actually, Ford Motor's turning a profit now in hard times.
Right.
So, you got to admire Ford Motor Company. Now, don't get me wrong. They had to lay off a whole bunch of boys. They had to really tighten their belt a bunch. But, here we are in what I think history will record as the greatest depression. Forget recession, people. Get real. The only difference between a recession and a depression, in a recession, your neighbor's out of work. In a depression, you're out of work.
Correct.
For most people, this is the greatest depression. We have unemployment that exceeds the unemployment in the early 30s. We have deflation of common assets like the value of your home, the value of your savings. The deflation on those assets is way greater than it ever was during what we call the Great Depression. Let's face it, this economy has tanked. Now, I don't think we've hit the bottom yet, but we're getting there pretty quick.
One thing I wanted to bring up, I want to go back to the beneficiaries of the Bush tax cuts. We're not talking about increasing taxes on those folks. What we're talking about is returning their tax rate to the pre-Bush levels. What they were paying clear up through the Clinton administration. And we're funding this reduction in tax revenue through deficit spending. Now we've got the Republicans, the party in power, saying to make up for this deficit, we're going to start cutting funding for programs. Now, some of the people that were elected, we have the largest freshman class of Republicans in the House right now. What is it, a class of like 87 people, members, are freshman Congress people, who, one, believe they have a mandate to slash and burn federal spending across the board willy-nilly. Just everything, cut. Enough that makes some fellow Republicans blush, going, I think we're going a little over the top here. But it's true, the fact that we are trying to now look at balancing the budget on the backs of those who are least represented in the country, least represented, their interests are least represented in Washington, by providing tax cuts to the top wage earners and wealthy in America who have not taken their money and reinvested in America. They're not doing that. They're not creating the jobs. They're keeping the money. They're investing it in other stuff.
And they're investing it overseas.
And overseas. This whole backlash, I mean, I feel, now, I got, in all fairness, to be fair and balanced, as you would say, I hope I don't get sued by Fox. When the Democrats, when Obama won the White House, and the Democrats had the majority in the House and in the Senate, they too felt they had this big mandate to go in and do all kinds of stuff. Some things very unpopular, like the way the health care reform care bill all happened. I get that. We'll probably never get a lot of people to agree about all that. But, you know, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and all the stuff that they did for a couple of years, a lot of Americans were frustrated with that. Didn't like it. And so when we had the last election cycle, we voted Republican, and many people voted Republican, not because they were giving a mandate to the Republicans either to slash and burn and kill the federal government. But I think some of these people truly believe that's their mission. That's
well, you know, Bruce, the problem is people get caught in this right-left paradigm.
Yep,
okay?
I agree with that. That's one of the smartest things I've heard you say.
We had this guy Bush, and it's like a mechanic jacking a car up one side at a time, okay? Bush goes over to the right side of the car, and he jacks like crazy, and he gets us involved in all kinds of wars, okay? Well, you know, average American is really, you know, not into a whole bunch of wars, particularly when we got no beef with somebody.
It's their kids that's going to fight and die.
Exactly. So now we got the car jacked way up on the right-hand side. The darn thing's just about ready to tip over. The American people are really, really pissed. So we got this really charming fella who reads a teleprompter real well, who says, I'm going to get you out of that darn war. Okay. So, you know, we're so pissed off at Bush, and we really, really, really want these wars stopped. So we decide, okay, we're going to fire this SOB and we're going to hire this SOB over here because he promises us he's going to get us out of this war. Well, now we get this guy Obama in, and Obama runs over to the right side of the car, and he starts jacking up the right side of the car. Well, unfortunately, he never really gets the car even, okay? He goes past even, and he keeps jacking, and now the car is way up on the left-hand side. And instead of stopping the war, he obligates us to a whole bunch of new entitlement programs that we cannot possibly afford. And get this, he signs off on giving something like, $20 trillion to bail out every bank in the world that happens to be, teetering on the verge of collapse. And, okay, so now we're pissed off with Obama. Now, next time around, we're going to elect a Republican. There is no question about it. I mean, Obama's done. He's pissed off enough people that, people have a very short memory, though.
They do.
A very short
memory.
I
agree with that statement as well.
And this Republican that we bring in, not only is the next Republican administration not going to stop the war, not going to repeal Obamacare, not going to get all that money back from the bankers that we gifted them with, but I guarantee you he'll be jacking that car up on the right-hand side to where it's teetering now on that side. They just keep ratcheting it up one side, then the other. The guy we bring in next is not going to do a damn thing to clear up the problems that were previously created. He's just going to cause a whole bunch of new ones. That has been the history of American politics for the last 100 years.
I think one of the most effective, and this may cause debate, but I would say during the last several years of office, Bill Clinton was probably one of the better presidents as far as not being too far left, not being too far on the right, more moderate, middle of the road. We enjoyed a couple years of prosperity, real or imagined. I think it was a bogus prosperity based on cheap credit, but we could all debate.
Bruce Clinton was the one who balanced the budget on our Social Security. He basically raided that lockbox. He took your Social Security and my Social Security, so now we don't have any Social Security retirement.
Right.
That's how he balanced the budget.
Right. Ron Nice is saying, yeah, you said it, brother. You have people's feelings about Clinton, but I will say that I think that for the last few years of his presidency, he was more of a centrist and more of a moderate and did try to really work at bipartisanship. What we're seeing now, like in Wisconsin, we're not seeing any effort at bipartisanship. We're not seeing any effort on the governor, Scott Walker of Wisconsin, to even negotiate with the union. There was a moderate Republican that put forth a proposal in Wisconsin. Tell you what, why don't we put a 2-year moratorium on things? Let's get everybody to agree. The union will agree to what you're asking for as far as givebacks on health care and retirement. They will agree for a 2-year period to come back and revisit some of these issues. We'll just put a 2-year freeze on everything after the givebacks. To Scott Walker, that's not good enough. He believes he has an absolute mandate from the people of Wisconsin to kill labor unions. And the Koch brothers are shipping people in on buses to protest on behalf of Walker. And we're not hearing, this is totally screwed up in my opinion.
Well, I tell you, for the, for the folks in chat, mm-hmm. I'm gonna go ahead and put a link out there in the chat room.
All right.
So those of you who are hanging out over at Justin TV and you're not engaged with the chat, you're probably going to miss this link, and you're going to be kicking yourselves in the butt for not coming over to the chat room and discussing this with us, because you probably really want to see this link. I just put a link out there to a very interesting video that shows a citizen journalist being arrested for reporting the truth to what's going on in Wisconsin. This is freedom of the press as it's practiced in the United States. I mean, frankly, if you watch that video, you'll think you're seeing a video coming out of Tripoli or someplace in Egypt, but no, that's coming out of Wisconsin. Yes, dissent is no longer permitted in Das Vaterland.
Wow, that's a strong statement. But We had talked Sunday about the internet kill switch.
So we're off of Wisconsin.
I think it kind of goes hand in hand, because of things such as Twitter, Facebook, and other social networking sites, the ability of people to quickly share information with each other, quickly keep each other updated, to organize, such as protests. You kind of wonder if Scott Walker doesn't sit back and go, I wish there was a way to kill Twitter and Facebook in Wisconsin. Just stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm just wondering. I know the auspice was in case there was a large-scale cyber attack on the United States that we could kill the internet and stop the damage from happening. The reality is, I personally believe, is to keep the American people from ever revolting against the U.S., organizing and revolting against the government. That's why they really want an internet kill switch. That's my opinion.
Well, yeah, let's face it. The revolution is coming to the United States. Now, you folks in the chat room, you can say I'm full of cow poop or whatever. I mean, that's fine and dandy. But I have a little longer history than many of you, I suspect. I marched with Martin Luther King. I was a kid, but I was out there marching for the civil rights movement. I fought the Vietnam War right here on the streets of America. I was pepper gassed. I was beaten. I was locked up. And I was corralled with thousands of others. I was hit with water cannons. So I've been through this before. I have been through a very tumultuous period of time in America when we were quite literally at war with the government of the United States. Now, we thought we won. And I have to apologize for the youngsters out there. I really do. I feel like I owe them an apology because we thought we won. We thought we beat the government of the United States. I suspect in many ways those of us who lived through that period of time and carried our banners and fought what we thought was the good fight, I suspect that we were duped, much like the people in Egypt. What really happened is we traded one jerk for another jerk, and the process, we might have set the process back, 10, 15 years, but in the big scheme of things, all we really did was slow them down. We didn't stop them. We were too naive to go in for the coup de grace. There should have been guillotines set up. We should have read our history of the French Revolution. But we were too naive. We thought we had won, so we all backed off and said, okay, the war's over, hallelujah, I can now have a normal life, raise a couple of kids, be a normal human being. I don't have to fight against the government anymore. So what happens now is it gets left to the next generation. We should have taken it the next step, and unfortunately we didn't. These protests that we're seeing in the Middle East, these protests like what's just now starting here in the United States, this is just the beginning. This spring is going to be very interesting all across the United States, because if you think the pressure that's being put on citizens in Wisconsin is, just something for the Wisconsin folks to worry about, guess again, it will be coming to a state near you. And you betcha our government is looking very close at what's happening in the Middle East. They're looking at how Egypt used the ability to shut down the internet. They're looking at how Gaddafi shut down the internet. They're looking at that saying, okay, how effective was it? Believe me, these guys are planners. They're looking very carefully.
Yes.
And you betcha they want that ability, because nowadays the way these protests would get organized
would be through Twitter.
Be through Twitter and Facebook. Back in the day, we used to all meet at the college campus, And everybody'd get a flyer, and they'd say, okay, you go to the Washington Monument, you go to the White House, and we draw lots. And, that's where we went to stage our protests. Mm-hmm. And we tried to have it broken up enough to where, they couldn't get us all in one small space, mm-hmm. because they love to overwhelm you with numbers. That's how they play the game.
Right.
So it was all strategy. It was all strategy. We played them, they played us. And that's how it's going to go next time around. And I'll tell you, the protests have already started here in Washington, D.C. It's not being. I live just south of Washington, D.C. And the protests have already started here. The last April 15th. You probably don't even know. Those of you all around the country probably don't even know. But there was a tax protest organized by the Tea Party that drew 2 million people mm-hmm. to the Capitol building. I was one of 2 million marching.
This was last April the 15th?
This was last April the 15th. Now, when it was reported on the news, it was reported as being a couple of thousand. Now, of course, if you got your news from Reuters or from Russia Today, they took an honorable head count, and it was reported by Russia Today and Reuters that there were 2 million people protesting at the Capitol building April 15th last year. But, of course, here in the U.S., the media, played it down, said, a couple thousand rabble-rousers, tax protesters, this, that, and the other thing, a bunch of kooks. It was really downplayed and kook factored here in the States. The protests began last year. It's going to heat up this year. We are all Egypt.
You know what? We are getting ready to run out of time here for this episode. But I like that. I always try to give my episodes a title. And I think, what do you guys think in the chat room? We are all Egypt. Do you think that would be a good title for today's episode?
Actually, I wish we'd take the Icelandic model. They threw their bankers in jail and fired all their politicians. I think they had a better idea than the Egyptians.
Yeah, Cindy, the Queen here, wants to know what news sites you read so she can go to them and check them out. Now, she's a big fan of, what's that, Cindy? Daily Mail, a UK news site. Where she goes to a lot. So Russia Today is one of the sites you like?
Well, I like Russia Today. Let me see here. In the news, I like INN World News. I particularly like Republic Broadcasting Network.
Okay, I'm going to write these down.
INN Blacklisted News is another really good one.
Okay, INN Blacklisted News.
And Republic Broadcasting Network. They have a number of audio broadcasts. It's internet radio, if you will.
Oh, okay.
And easily found in your favorite search engine. Okay. And, of course, having taken the red pill, any search engine except Google is appropriate for my use.
Any search engine except Google, because I understand your feelings about Google. Now, before we go, let's go ahead and give a shout out, a little bit of information about your show so people can go there. How can they follow you on Twitter? You're Smart Scarecrow.
Well, yeah, I am at Smart Scarecrow on Twitter, and if you might be interested in my show, I do a Thursday evening broadcast. It's at 9 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursday evenings. I do one show a week. The show's focus is on alternative energy technologies, but I typically do get a little topical news and politics mixed in, and as a rule, I'm not afraid to tackle some pretty tough topics.
Well, there you go. And the name of your show?
It's justin.tv/SmartScarecrow. You'll catch me. Now, if you follow me at SmartScarecrow on Twitter, I always give an announcement about the show when the time's going to be, give you a link, and so that's probably the easiest way. Just follow me on Twitter.
Okay. All right. Well,
I appreciate the opportunity to give my show a plug there, Bruce.
Oh, well,
I hope we entertained your audience.
I think we did.
I was entertained.
The Queen was entertained, for sure. I want to remind everybody we'll be back again Sunday with Business Computing Weekly with co-host John Atkinson. So that should be a lot of fun. And remind everybody, make sure that you hit that follow us button on Justin.tv. Remember, if it's in your shop not making you money or saving you money, get it out of there. We'll see you next Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much, everybody.